maybe a fourth. They're coming at him, he's been 6 and 7. Top to Broncos has been an 8.
Oh, wow.
No.
8 games of footy to look forward to this weekend, and SuperCoach365 podcast back to talk all of that and to wrap up some of the team previews as well. Ryan Selvage, Tommy Hudson with you. Tommy, how are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Getting pretty eager, to be honest, seeing all these team lists for the games this week. We just had the All-Stars last week, and, you know, it seems like the SuperCoach chatter is really going up, so I'm getting really excited.
Yep, going up here especially. We're going to kick into overdrive tonight, and then obviously after the weekend's play as well. But let's talk a bit of news before we do dive into the trials. And I guess big news this morning for Newcastle fans that Kalen Ponga has suggested that he's going to stick around next year. We said last week that this was going to be a big story to play out this year, but good place to start for Newcastle before a ball's kicked that their number one man looks like he's staying put.
Yeah, it looks that way, although I wouldn't bet my life on it really. I just think the way he kind of said it was a little bit here and there, the way he kind of committed his future to Newcastle. But look, hopefully for the Knights' sake, he does stay. I almost think for his personal sake, he should maybe leave to see if he can find his best footy elsewhere, because I just don't think the Knights team is that strong this year, but we'll get into the Knights later in the podcast.
Yep, one of the 4 teams we'll chat today. Obviously the Knights, the Broncos, the Eels, the Sharks. And you mentioned that quote there. He was asked, does his future lay in Newcastle? And he said, I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty certain I will be, yeah. Like, again, I said good news for Knights fans, but you dive a little bit deeper, or you don't even really have to dive deep. You just look at that on the surface, and he's their captain, so maybe he just has to say that, because if he is considering other options, it's not a great look before even round one.
There was only really one right answer to that question, and I don't think he answered it that convincingly, but I don't know. We've seen him say some interesting things in the past. I remember that strawberry milkshake quote he had a few years ago, so don't really know what's going to go on there, but hopefully it can be sorted sooner rather than later for everyone. Also,
in Clubland, the Dragons have extended the coach Griffin, of course. I know you've had some thoughts on this already, but interesting to do it before the season, given the pressure we've seen on coaches, particularly Mary McGregor in the past, at the Dragons. To do it before we've seen anything from the Dragons this year, it's maybe a little bit strange.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me, because I doubt that Anthony Griffin would have been a man in demand by other clubs, so I don't really see the rush to do it unless he's kind of demanded it. I don't know. I don't really see a rush. Do you?
No. I mean, we've seen this in the past, and I mean, what do they get out of extending the coach? Because if they are to come out and lose a couple on the trot, and they're 4 and 8 at Origin time, I think it just sets them up to look a little bit silly, to be honest. Because then again, they're probably 12 months behind. I think he's extended for at least another 2 years. Could be wrong, but anyway, good show of faith in the coach. Anyway, nothing else for the Dragons, but. Interesting times indeed. Speaking of interesting times, how about this? The NRL today has made history. It's partnered with Swift FX, the first crypto partnership for the NRL. I'm just throwing this in there, Tommy, because I know you're a crypto man at heart. And interesting, a sign of the times of where the game is headed, where the world's headed with this. And obviously we've seen Brandon Smith and link up with YKTR. He's getting paid in Ethereum. And what do you make of it all? It's certainly interesting, and how this will play out in deals beyond this year as well.
It's really hard to know, but I think it's exciting that the NRL has, I guess, taken this step to kind of put their foot into the crypto world and align themselves with a company. I don't know much about SwiftX at all. I own a little bit of crypto, but I really couldn't say I'm an expert or anything, so I have no idea where this is going to go. But it's exciting times for the NRL, and who knows?
Next logical question then is, if there is an NFT set and you can own one moment from the history of the NRL, 110 plus years, what moment do you want to own as a Raiders fan? Or does that sway your thoughts?
Before you said Raiders fan, I was going to say the Darren Albert try when the Knights won the grand final. I always think of that one as the best NRL moments, but God, there hasn't been many good Raiders moments for me. Since I've been alive, that Papali try against the Rabbitohs in the 2019 prelim was good, but few and far between.
I think for mine, it'd be Greg Inglis's try in 2014, the Goanna, when they sealed the premiership. Iconic moment. Anyway, we digress. We're here to talk SuperCoach, and let's get into that. Actually, before we do, throw up this, our group code, SuperCoach365 overall group code, there on your screens. 576 855. We've already got upwards of 650 people in there. Absolutely free to play. Win $100. All you have to do is follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter to be eligible to take home the prize at the year's end. But very easy to get involved, and we encourage you to do so. Still a couple of weeks, of course, until the season kicks off. I think it's 3 weeks today, Tommy. So we don't have to wait too much longer to start talking week-to-week SuperCoach. It should be good fun.
No, exactly right. Free to play, as you say, and a little bit of incentive there to join the group. And yeah, 3 weeks away, and this week, tomorrow, in fact, we've got trial match action starting.
Yep. For those watching us or listening to us, you can watch us on YouTube. Search SuperCoach365. I mentioned there the graphics on your screen. And if you are watching us, I'm looking a bit red tonight. I've been sunburnt, hit by the Sydney sun, so bear with me, Tomato and Tommy here, to get you through these 4 teams. Tommy, actually, before we jump ahead to that, let's talk some trial footy. We've already sort of glossed over the fact that there's 8 games this weekend. Every team in action from Friday through till Monday, so we get it Monday night footy. And your team, we've already mentioned there, the Raiders, they'll take on the Roosters and kick us off on Friday night.
Yeah, looking forward to this. It's almost like a full round. You got a Friday 6 p.m. game and everything, and I'm pretty sure it's all on Fox Sports, so should be good watching. No Jamal Fogarty tomorrow night, so possibly they're taking this game not too seriously. Xavier Savage gets a start in the fullback role. Roosters looking pretty light on for our first grade talent, but we do see Kevin Nagama make a return.
Yeah, that was one then that stood out for mine as well, and getting that wing spot. So it suggests if obviously Momirovski and Suwali aren't there, to me suggests that they're going to play Nagama on the wings, as we sort of thought this whole time. Anyway, Lockie Lamb at fullback, interesting, of all places to pop up. And I guess Drew Hutchinson's there in the 6, the role we saw him play much of in 2021. Don't know how he'll go come round 1. Obviously, Keary and Walker will probably be the preferred halves. But anyway, a chance to stake his case in this one. You mentioned there Savage at fullback, Nickel Clockstad, jersey 14. That's probably the biggest talking point out of this, because we thought that Savage, if he was going to come into grade, would come in on the wing or a utility role off the bench, but it's the other way, the more experienced C&K off the bench.
Yeah, I don't know how much we read into it being a trial match and whatnot. I reckon we'll probably see a little bit of both during the game. I do think, though, what is interesting is that Rapana is out for the first 2 games. So I think there's a good chance we'll see both named in the first grade team come round 1. Yep,
some other youngsters there as well. Albert Hopper-Wate on the wing as well. So a couple of cheapies there for the Raiders. We're not going to talk results too much today because it's more about who's playing than the actual results. But you look at the next game on Friday night, still at Leichhardt, West Tigers versus Seagulls. Jersey number 1, Tommy Trbojevic. Maybe interesting to roll out the Ferrari in this one, but they're not holding back the Seagulls. It's a pretty strong lineup.
Yeah, very strong team. Garrick, Cherry Evans and Foran, and a pretty good 4-pack as well. The Tigers, we don't get to see Brooks and Hastings combined, but Brooks is there, still waiting on Hastings.
Yeah, Madden will run out in the 6 for the Tigers. New signing Oliver Gildart, partners James Roberts in the centres. I think they only upgraded Roberts to a top 30 deal as recent as last week or week before. So shows you that very quick fall from grace for Jimmy the Jet, playing Origin in 2018. 4 years later, nearly out of the NRL. Alex Twal in 14 and Tyrone Peachy in 13. I like this by the Tigers. I think Twal will come on as more of that traditional prop role and Peachy a ball player through the middle. So again, that sort of answers that question as to how they're going to use those two this year.
Yeah, I think we spoke the other day about the evolving nature of the lock position. I think Tyrone Peachy is a good lock to go forward with. He's a good ball player, can take some hard runs if he has to. So I think that's a good decision by Madge.
Yep. Otherwise, you can see all these teams at NRL.com, of course, ahead of the weekend. But yeah, both games on Friday night covered by Fox League. The next one here, Saturday afternoon, the Storm and the Warriors. This one at Casey Fields. I think this is at... where is it, Tommy? Casey Fields.
It's in Melbourne.
Geelong somewhere? I don't know, anyway. Nick
Somewhere
Meaney,
in Melbourne.
jersey number 1. No Ryan Pappenhausen. And some other young names there as well. Jack Howarth in the centres. Now, he's a second-row forward on SuperCoach, but gets his run in the centres for the Storm this weekend.
Yeah, no Ryan Pappenhausen, which I'm sure you're disappointed about. How about his hair the other day? I saw a promotional shoot with him. Jesus, it's a new level.
Yeah. I mean, I'm jealous. I'm jealous about a lot of things with Ryan Papenhuyzen, but speed is one thing, hair is another. William Warbrick, the former, I think he was a sevens player for New Zealand, may have played at the Olympics, don't quote me. Jaden Nikorima in the sevens, Cooper Johns, again, all this team, probably don't read into it too much, but Brandon Smith, jersey 13, Harry Grant, jersey 14, may be interesting that he's not in the 9.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know much about Tyron Wishart starting hooker. For the Warriors, I think it is a pretty important trial for both Cody Nikorima and Ash Taylor. They're the halves for them on Saturday. I think both will see it as a real audition to kind of partner SJ in the halves.
Yeah, Reece Walsh there for jersey, or in jersey number 1, but we know he won't be there for round 1. Jesse Arthur's on the wing. I think that's surprising that he beats out Dallin to a wing spot. Dallin's in the centres, so I've seen a couple of people tipping up Dallin to play on the right wing. That may not be the case. Our boy Rocco Berry, he's there as well. Yeah, important trial for the halves, as you say, Tommy. I think one of these, well, plus Chanel Harris-Tavita, not in this team, or rather he's in the reserves, jersey 17, but it's going to be a situation of 3 into 1 almost to see who's going to be there with SJ. I think SJ is there for certain.
Yeah, there's been lots of chat about this, and we discussed it after the All-Stars with both Cody and Chanel playing pretty well the other night. So, yeah, I've no idea what's going to happen there. Moving on to the Rabbitohs and the Cowboys from Barlow Park in Cairns. Get to see Blake Taff and Lachlan Ilias start together.
Yeah, looking forward to this one. Another one of the young guns, Davey Mawali in jersey 10, SuperCoach cheapie. He's about $200,000, playing at front row forward. That'll be a popular pick. For mine, Jed Cartwright, jersey 12. Now, I don't know about you, Tommy, but in every team I've sort of put together, I've come back to Jed Cartwright so many times, not because I think he's a superstar, but his 2RF centre wing eligibility. And I think, South's forward stocks this year maybe not as impressive as they have been in other years. So I think there's a bench role for Jed Cartwright waiting to happen, maybe even as soon as round 1.
Yeah, I think from memory I might have him in my side also. He probably, the name I guess, tips you off and you just think I'll put him in as a cheapie, but I guess we'll get a good look at him on Saturday as well. For the Cowboys, Griffin Neem, Ben Condon, a few of these young forwards we get to see again. Dejan Arce has shown promise in the past, and he'll be starting halfback.
Yeah. Connolly Lamelu, interestingly, in the back row, and he also says that that's where his future is. So I think he has been playing through the centres in his time in first grade so far, but otherwise, no Chad Townsend for the Cowboys, no Valentine Holmes, no Jason Taumalolo. So putting the big guns on ice for this first trial. All eyes obviously on South's young spine members, as they will be up at Suba Super Stadium on Saturday night when the Titans and the Broncos go head-to-head. Jaden Campbell's there, Toby Sexton for the Titans as well. So this young combination gets a chance to link up early.
Yeah, some young names there. Jaden Campbell, I think we said he only played 6 games last year, but I feel like he played so many more. So I'm keen to see him go around again. For the Broncos, Selwyn Cobbo on the wing, but we heard today that Tessie New will be out probably for the first couple of weeks. So who will get that fullback jersey in the place of Tessie New come round 1?
Yeah, is it Cobbo? Is it Asako? I think Asako was on the outer. And I think we saw this a couple of years ago. Remember Jack Bird went down on the eve of the season when he was going to play fullback. And suddenly Asako was the unwanted man after a good 2019 season. 2018, it's probably even better. But Asako, I don't know. He just has this thing about him. I think he's going to force his way into this team. He won't kick goals, though. So if you're looking at Asako, I think he made a stack of cash last year. So did Tessie New. But I think where Asako is worse off this year than he was last year, don't fall into the trap because all of those goals will be going to Adam Reynolds. Reynolds not there this week. So we may touch on the makeup of the Broncos side as we get into our Broncos preview very, very soon. Otherwise, the Sharks and the Panthers on Sunday afternoon. Pretty young side here for the Sharks. Not many names jumping off the page. Again, it's probably a case of the cheapies more so than anything. But anything here in this one to look out for?
I guess just Braden Trindle playing alongside a lot of these sort of no-name players. Whether we read anything into that or not, I don't know. We'll chat to the Sharks in a sec. For the Panthers, Charlie Staines gets another run at fullback, and he's been good there at times, but obviously he was missing out on first grade spots last year, so interesting to follow him this year.
Yep, Targo in the centres. This will be a big watch. What side of the field is he on, left or right? We're probably thinking left with Steph Crichton to stay down that right side, although you never know. If Tago's on the right side, suddenly I'm worried about Brian To'o because Steph Crichton doesn't pass the ball. Otherwise, yeah, probably not too much to speak of. It does look like a weekend where we'll see a lot of these young guys get a run. Next week, probably the real hit out for a lot of these teams throwing in those bigger names to see and work on those combinations.
Yeah, exactly right. I think though most NRL teams will take week 2 more seriously, but still, especially for SuperCoach purposes, this is a really important week to watch for those pods and those real cheapies.
Yep, Sunday night, 6 p.m. We're looking here, the Dragons and the Eels. This one at CommBank Stadium, Parramatta. The Dragons, they have Tyrrell Sloan on the wing. This is interesting. Cody Ramsey gets first go at fullback. That's probably something to look at there. And young Junior Amone in the 5/8 jersey, not playing through the centres. So a couple of big takeaways there for the Dragons.
Yeah, really surprised we don't see Sloan at fullback. Whether or not this is what they do round 1, who knows? But yeah, surprised to see Cody Ramsey there because I thought he was a little bit small for the position last year, but we shall see.
Otherwise, again, plenty of young names here. Jake Arthur and Jordan Rankin in the half. So that's a Wentworthville Magpies combination. Well, I shouldn't say that. Parramatta Eels, New South Wales Cup combination there in the halves waiting to happen, I think. No Moses, no Brown. And then Monday night footy. This one here, the Knights and the Bulldogs. Still awaiting some team lists. But we will see Matt Duffy in action. So too Paul Vaughan, TPJ. So plenty of new look faces on offer for the Dogs.
Yeah, we said the other day how new the Dogs team is, and yeah, it'll be interesting on Monday night to watch them all go around for the first time. The Knights, we know what we're going to expect from them, but they'll be looking to get some confidence pre-season.
Probably a good place to start there. Let's segue into the Newcastle Knights because they can start to build some confidence, and I think they're going to have to in these trials. Plenty of new combinations there in the halves, and obviously Randall, we're expecting him to play a lot of minutes at 9 with Brayley now injured, so the Knights, it's an interesting prospect. We led with the news of Kalen Ponga sticking around, but I think, and I still feel, I said this a couple of weeks ago, if they start so slow and they're 4-8 or 3-10, whatever it is, after 13 weeks, and we're at Origin 1, I don't see how they keep Kalen Ponga.
Yeah, it's going to be the story of the season because, as you said there, we're kind of expecting them to be or have a negative record at least going into the middle of the season. I just think they will with the lack of quality in their spine other than Ponga. He might be hard to keep. Like you say, he might get itchy feet and want to move. I honestly think with the Knights, just looking at their team, with no real stars in the 6, 7, and 9, I almost feel like Kalen Ponga is going to have to be top 3 in the Dally M medal count for the Knights to do anything this year.
Yep, best 17 on your screens now via NRL.com, of course. Kalen Ponga, number 1. We see there that new halves pairing in, let's just wind that back a little bit, in Clifford and Clune. Going to be plenty of pressure on these two, I think, because even coming through the New South Wales Cup, Adam Clune was always more of a 5/8 than he was an out-and-out halfback, I feel anyway. And then whenever he's played for the Dragons, he's always been that number 6 sort of role with either a Ben Hunt there beside him to sort of help him out in that playmaking sense. Chris Randall there, as we say, very popular SuperCoach pick, owned by 46% in the absence of Jaden Brayley, and he's just almost a must-have given what we think his role will be, and obviously his price. He's got money to make there.
He does, and I think as soon as Brayley went down, he became almost a must-have, and he's not a spectacular player, but I think he showed in late game performances last year. It may have just been one performance. He scored really well. He had a lot of tackles and a lot of base stats. So if you can do that week in, week out, he'll be a great cheapie in SuperCoach. The thunder rumbles behind me very loud.
Can hear that.
But yes, big storms out here in the Sydney's West. But yes, Adam Clune, not sold on him completely. I think he showed enough at the Dragons last year to just say that he's kind of a fringe first grader. But he's got the task of, I guess, steering the team around this year, and it's a big one.
I don't want to talk too much about Chris Randall, but 46% owned. How that's not upwards of 60, I don't know. We've already spoken about him a couple of times, but Kalen Ponga 8% owned. That surprises me a little bit as well. Because he's not going to be kicking goals. Maybe it's a case of that 8% thinks he is going to play more like a 5/8 there, and yeah, I don't know. I don't see how he gets in anyone's team ahead of a Teddy or a Pap, or even I'd rather go with Latrell despite that suspension.
Yeah, Ponga's really a wait and see. It could go one of two ways. He could really love just being the focal point of that team and being involved in all their tries. But then again, how many tries are they going to score? They really look like they lack a lot of creativity. He's going to do it all, have to do it all himself, and he may not be able to. Let's be honest. He's got Bradman Best there, which there was a big boom on him, I guess, and he's been okay. Only 3% owned. Maybe he's a sneaky pod.
Yeah, I mean, everyone tipped up Bradman Best, didn't they, back into last year? He had that, what looked a gun run home, and he just didn't get involved enough, and maybe that's the question that they have to ask. Not only that, is how do they get Dane Gagai involved in the play? Because we did one of our posts on the 2022 Recruit Series on our Instagram some time ago. I'll just bring it up because the numbers, they were damning reading for Gagai, and I think there's going to be some questions asked of how they include him in their backline more often than what they have done their previous right centres. So we think he's going to play right centre. I just go off the makeup of their team. Last year, he averaged 68 points per game, the 5th best CTW overall. But now he goes to the Knights, back 5, lands in the worst patch of territory, I think, in their team. Because they're always going to go left. Ponga, Clifford, they love going down the left. They love going to Bradman Best. But Gagai, I think he's going to struggle in this team. The Knights, they scored just 17.9 points per game last year. That was the 15th worst. I mean, how do they get him in the game? He's an Origin player. I just feel like he's going to be a waste at Newcastle.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard sell. What you said there, if he's going from the hottest side in the comp, which was like the South left side in 2021, to potentially the Knights right side, which gets no ball, as we say, he's hard to include in your team at all. And he's a great player. He's a great centre. So maybe he will get more ball than we're thinking, but I know what you're saying. Tyson Frizzell, I have maybe as a potential pod or at least an option in draft, perhaps. He averages well every year, even when the sides he's in aren't going very well. He's always doing a decent job, and he's only 1% owned.
Yeah. He's going to be, one of those players that goes late-ish in drafts, I'll say, around 10, 11 even. And Mr. Consistent, I mean, I think he's as good as 65 points per game, maybe better. And his minutes, I think he's going to have to play minutes because really, besides Ponga, who is going to be their captain, Clem has been benched, Pearce is out the door. He is their real leader there, I think, Tyson Frizzell.
Yeah, he's probably, I guess, the remaining senior player. They've got, like you said, Claimer on the bench. But yeah, I think Frizzell, we can expect a big year from him this year. But yeah, other than that, I don't like a lot of the Knights players. I know Mitch Barnett had a lot of SuperCoach following last year, but I'm not really getting sucked into that personally.
No, probably remiss of us not to mention the Saifidi brothers. I think Jacob's actually set for a starting role this year, so he could be another one that sort of flies under the radar in draft leagues. But historically he's come off the bench, but one of those players that may pick up minutes. And if he continues that trajectory that brother Daniel went on, he might be in the Origin team as well, sooner rather than later. Why not have two? Instead of one, Saifidi for the New South Wales Blues. Tommy, I think we've spoken too much about the Knights. For mine, you look at their first 3 months, if they win more than 4 games, I'll honestly be so shocked. They may win 4, but I don't have them winning 5. It's terrible.
No, it's a tough run, and I just think Clifford, Clune, and Randall as his 6, 7, 9, there's just no attack there. Ponga's going to have to do it all himself, and like I said before, if they're to do anything this year, he's going to have to be unbelievable. I've got them coming 13th. What about you?
Yeah, I've got them with the spoon, and I think I've made no secrets of that already this year. I just like the 17.9 points per game, so less than 3 tries a game. You take out your 7 and your 9. Like no Pearce, no Brayley. Like for mine, and not only we mentioned them, but Frizzell a leader. Brayley was their captain. Now he's gone. So I don't see how this team improves. I think Pearce still, I know he copped a lot of flack. I still think he was a top 6 halfback in the NRL. I don't think they're better for not having Pearce and Brayley. And for mine, if they're not scoring 18 points a game, they're not winning many games because the teams below them, even the Bulldogs, the Broncos, who we'll get to in just a moment, even the Tigers, I think the Tigers can score more than 3 tries a game. And Newcastle, I think they might even score less than that. So for mine, I've got them getting the spoon.
Yeah, the only thing that stops me from tipping them that low, I guess, is the Ponga factor. I still think he's a quality player, but he's really going to have to show it this year. And their 4-pack is still good. The 2 Saifidi brothers, I like them. I like Frizzell. I like Clemmer off the bench. And Mitch Barnett's all right. So they have a little bit of quality in the forwards, but I agree it's going to be a pretty long season for them.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on from the Knights because we've spoken enough about a team that's probably going to run bottom four. Let's get on to the Broncos because they have been running bottom four in recent years, but I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. Adam Reynolds, obviously the big signing. Kurt Capel joins the club as well. Where to for the Broncos this year? I mean, they've splashed the cash. They've got to go on and return to somewhat of what we've seen in the mid-2000s and challenge for a top 8 eventually. Does it start this year, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see an upturn in fortune from them. I don't know if they'll make the 8 or not, but I really think they'll be an improved side. They have such a good young nucleus of players, in Haas and Staggs and Selwyn, Cobbo, Tessie New. They're all solid players. They probably just needed some experience and some leadership, and they get that in the form of Adam Reynolds.
Yep, and obviously one of their young leaders, Payne Haas, a very popular SuperCoach pick, 52% owned. Yeah, that's probably about where you expect to see him. If you're not picking him, you're obviously going around the front rows and spending your cash elsewhere. But for mine, Payne Haas, I think he's less than $600,000. I can see him even growing that. Katoni Staggs, Tommy, I know you like Katoni Staggs, 41% owned. He gets in at a discounted price. He came back from injury last year, performed really well. Let's just hope he can stay fit, because if he does, I think we all know that his ceiling is pretty high.
Yeah, he just seemed like a must-have to me at the price. He was in the 400s somewhere there, 41%. That doesn't surprise me at all, really. When he is on the field, which has not been often the last few years due to injury and suspension off the field and whatnot, he's such a gun on the field. So hopefully he can stay on. And with Reynolds there now, a bit more direction in their attack, he gets some real ball this year.
Yep, another one that we're expecting to get plenty of ball, and now even more ball if he's going to move to the back, is Selwyn Cobbo, 22%. I think we saw glimpses last year of what this kid can do. It's hard not to compare him to Latrell because, I mean, the way they play is so similar. It's probably unfair on Cobbo, but if he used to go to the fullback role, when we can see him chiming in both sides, I mean, we saw at the back end of last year what he did with Wynnum in the Q Cup there to finish the year last year. He is just such a handful, and the Broncos are going to be the beneficiaries of that this year.
Yeah, I don't have him in my side at the moment, but I do see the appeal, especially if he ended up getting the fullback slot with Tessie out. So that's definitely a must-watch there. I mean, who do we think? Cobbo, David Mead's been named this week. We've got Asako also. So it's going to be pretty hot watching that first Tuesday to see who gets the Broncos number 1.
Yeah, it's funny though as well because Cobbo, Tessie, and Asako, those three particularly, I mean, throw in David Mead if you want, but those three young sort of, they could play anywhere really, 1 to 5, all three of them. So there's options there for the Broncos. Where they land, I think SuperCoach is going to respond and react to that anyway, and I think you'll see one of those ownerships go up. We're probably hoping it's Cobbo, to be honest, because I think there's more upside there with Cobbo than maybe what we've seen with Asako already. We've mentioned Adam Reynolds. Let's bring up this best 17 here while we talk about all that. And here it is now. Tessie New at the back, they're expecting, but obviously he's injured. So that goes to say that that's going to be a definite change there. Corey Oates on the wing, I don't know if we see that. I think he's tipped to sign with Penrith sooner rather than later, actually. They do have a good centre pairing, don't they? Staggs and Farnworth. Farnworth, very underrated. And then the halves, they're tipping Albert Kelly to get the jump on some of those other names. Ezra Mam, who else they got? Gamble as well there that could push for a start in the 6. Otherwise, the forward pack, though, very, very good and obviously led by Haas. But there's some names there on this list, Tommy, as you see it, that it's quality there. So I think it's a matter of time for the Broncos when they return to winning ways.
Yeah, there's lots of quality young players there. And like I said, I think the signings of both Capewell and Reynolds are really smart in the fact that they're experienced and leader-type players. What do we make of Adam Reynolds this year? He's only owned by 8%. He's not a traditional high scorer in SuperCoach. Do you think possibly the move to a weaker team could mean higher scores, perhaps?
Yeah, I think we ran the numbers when we did our Souths preview. He was involved in just 8% of all Souths tries, and all of that went through Cody Walker down the left. So maybe there's some upside there. I mean, you think Reynolds isn't a great SuperCoach player. I say, go back and look at his scores from 2020. They were phenomenal. So we know that he can do it. What do we make of him at the Broncos? It's obviously a lesser team than South, but he may be more hands-on. Maybe he's not stationed on the right so much, and he can go both sides, and he is that main man where everything's off him, as it was off Cody back at South. I don't know. I think there's value there at 8%. He's probably going to be one of those players that slides in draft leagues because there's that thinking there that he won't be kicking as many goals at the Broncos as he was at Souths, and obviously that propped up a lot of his scores. But I don't know, 8%, maybe it's a little bit overs for Classic given the other options, but I can make a case for him in a draft league maybe.
Yeah, I think all things considered, definitely. I think the fact that he's at a lesser team actually helps him because he's getting a lot more ball. Like you said, they're only 8% of tries. I think you said at South last year. Cody Walker was so dominant. So he will definitely have more of a hand in it at Brisbane, and his goal kicking is always very reliable. So that's a big one, I think. The same thing on the goal kicking, though. Jermaine Osako, as you said before, you think he's a no-go this year?
Yeah, I don't think he kicks. So Reynolds has kicked at 85% for his 10-year career. So Sarko, maybe put him on ice for 12 months, and depending on what happens next year when he goes to the Dolphins, if he's playing, centers, wing, fullback, whatever it is, if he's kicking goals ahead of, well, they've got 4 players at this stage, aren't they, the Dolphins? So he's probably first in line to take the tee at this stage. But for mine, no, Sarko doesn't kick. He did kick goals at last week's trial, though, against Wynnum, where they won convincingly. So something to keep an eye on. Overall, though, the Broncos, I've still got them missing the 8. I think they're almost they're hindered by the fact that they are the Broncos, the one-team town. They get so many games against these bigger names for TV audiences. Their draw, regardless of how they've gone the year before, is always so tough. They play these heavyweight teams so many times, and I just don't see them competing again.
Yeah, we used to say that they had an unfair advantage because they played every Friday, but I guess that on the other side of it, they're always playing blockbuster matches, which are pretty hard. So I see what you're saying there. I've got them coming 11th. I think they'll have a good season, but I just don't know if this is the year they'll make the finals. I think in the next few, we'll see them become more of a force in the competition, but maybe not in 2022.
Yeah, I think they've got you use that word nucleus at the start there, and you think of the players they've let go as well. Walsh, Sam Walker, David Fafita. Maybe not let go, but they've certainly, lost them out of the squad. So, but they've kept Payne Haas and Pat Carrigan for mine. Tommy Flegler again, he's an enforcer in waiting. He gives me those Ben Hannant vibes, and we know Hannant went on to represent Queensland. So I think there's brighter days for the Broncos, but maybe not in season 2022. Tommy, we're going to leave it there on those two teams. We're going to go to a quick break. On the other side of the break, we'll talk the Parramatta Eels and the Cronulla Sharks.
Having a bet on the racing this week? Top this.
With Top Sport's best of the best multis, top odds are guaranteed. Place a best of the best multi during Saturday Metro meetings for the top fluck or dividend from the best 3 national totes. Plus, there's best of the best to win up to $5 grand too.
Top that. Download the app today. Top Sport. Feel the excitement.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly.
Welcome back. SuperCoach365 podcast, proudly brought to you again in 2022 by topsport.com.au. Mentioned the racing there. It's on every day. Tommy's glued to the phone tonight. Penrith trots are on. And a big weekend of harness coming up in a couple of weeks' time, right around Team List Tuesday time. The Miracle Mile, Tommy. Talk us through that.
Yeah, probably the most famous harness race, I would say that, or the Inter-Dominion. But yes, the Miracle Mile at Menangle. I think it's Saturday, March the 5th, so the last Saturday before the season starts. So there's no trials that weekend either, so no reason not to tune in to Sky Racing and watch some harness racing.
Or go out there. I think the Mardi Gras is on that night as well, so you might be torn where you'll be. Otherwise, let's talk some footy, eh? Parramatta Eels, one of those teams that's been perennial top 8 finishes in recent years. Whether or not they can go on and push for a top 4 or a premiership, I think this is the year. They either have to do it this year or it could be another 30, 40 years before they do it, because Gutho's getting older, Mitch Moses is getting older, Reid Marnie's out the door at the end of the year. That's how I see it. How do you see it for the Eels?
Yeah, I do say it like that, but I don't really see what's changed this year. The last few years, they've made the semis. They've looked good our regular season, and they've kind of hit the wall back end, and they've just kind of been thrown out the back door in the finals. Haven't really signed anyone of note this year, so why is anything going to change?
I don't know. I mean, I personally, I don't think it does. We see the best 17 on your screens there with you now, Tommy. Clint Gutherson at the back, obviously. So much comes off Gutho. Dylan Brown, I think, had a quiet year last year. If he can find something and give them a bit more attack, because last year it was everything through maybe predominantly even Marnie, then Moses, and then obviously Gutho chiming in out the back. Papali'i out the door as well at the end of the year. He's off to the Tigers. Reid Marnie, we've already said he's off to the Dogs. Near Corey, I think he's signed with the Warriors from next year. So there will be this bit of a changing of the guard next year for the Eels. So maybe it is I don't know. We saw it with South last year. I know they didn't win the title, but maybe there was that sense of urgency around Bennett leaving, Reynolds leaving. Maybe the Eels will draw on that. I don't know. I think they've got a very tough draw. We'll get to that in a moment, but it could be a case for the Eels that they've been building to this season for the past 2 or 3.
They have, in a way, but I don't think I've seen enough forward momentum, really. I don't think they went forward last year compared to 2020. I think also comparing it to South had a lot more strike in their backline. I look at this Eels backline and I don't know, I really don't like their centers and wingers, personally. And Dylan Brown last year was awful, to be honest. I thought he was going to be one of the emerging great halves of the comp, and he was just very disappointing. So, look, I wouldn't be surprised if Jacob Arthur doesn't put pressure on him because he's been playing well for more reports.
Yeah, and we've seen Moses obviously play 6 in his Tigers days, so maybe it is that mixing of roles. Wait and see. That best 17 there that was up, they had Maker Sivo in jersey 2, and obviously that's their best 17, but I think he's out injured for at least a good chunk of the season. Did he do ACL? I think he did, so that'll open up the spot for maybe even Sean Russell, a cheapie there, not named in that best 17, but we saw him come into grade last year. Simonson there as well. Tell me, I might be missing someone, but there's going to be a spot open on that left wing. Where does that go?
It might be Sean Russell, but overall, like Russell, you got Penasini, who we'll speak about in Supercoach terms in a sec, Wonga Blake, Bailey Simonson. Pretty weak, I think. I don't think there's a lot of strike power there, so they're going to need to find something there. Will Penasini, 40% owned in Supercoach. He looks to get a good run in the team this year. Was solid last year in a few appearances.
Yep. Simonson, what do you make of him? Obviously coming from the Raiders, he had a goodish, that's a word, goodish base. But he's probably going to be that right wing, we think, and could he potentially... I mean, every team would love to have a Brian To'o. Could he be that for the Eels? Because he is tough. I mean, coming out of his own end, he's tough, but you shake your head there. You don't think he's the man?
I'd be very surprised. I haven't seen anything from him to suggest that he's a good Supercoach player. The only good score he had last year was when he played fullback for a game for Canberra. So, I do take that back. There was a couple of good scores at the back end of the year, but that was when I think he scored 3 tries. So, not a lot of base to go off there. I just don't think he's an option.
I only put that question to you because Russell is a smaller, more slender build. They're losing Fergo and Sivo. So how are they getting out of their own end? Maybe that's a question that they'll have to come up with. You mentioned Penasini there. I think he's a star of the future, and Supercoaches think so as well. 40% owned. So I think it's a combination of his potential in the limited games we saw him last year, but also that cheap price. It's just, so many positives there with Will Penasini.
Yeah, and he looks like an obvious starter. I think a lot of these other cheapies were kind of bumming and ahhing if they're going to get a spot, but it looks like Penasini definitely will. So I think everyone just sort of played the safe option there. Another popular player is Isaiah Papali'i, and obviously last year, well spoken about how good he was. Ended the year on quite a low note with some lower scores. Do we read anything into that?
Well, he was playing through the middle a lot of that, wasn't he? And he was being used more as a prop and on occasions and then on an edge, and he was getting benched. And I think to start the year, he scored a lot of tries. And obviously, I'm not knocking that because David Fafita was the same. It's a part of their game, and obviously if he's a strike player, then that's the way that you have to look at him, so much like Angus Crichton at the Roosters even. But Papali'i, it was a real breakout year for him. Can he sustain it? We don't know. We haven't seen it year on year for Papali'i anyway. So, and again, he's off to the Tigers. He's already inked that deal. So maybe there's not that need for him to race out of the blocks and show us what he can do because he's already settled his future.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Definitely the fact that he's leaving, and also there's not the value there this year. Last year he was a massive price rise, but he's already expensive this year. And like you said, we don't have that reliability factor with him that we know he'll do it again. So I've gone around him for now. Looking at some pods, I think Reid Marnie, 9% owned. I thought it might be higher. I know there's a lot of good hookers, so a few really good hookers. He's probably one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll back you up there. Reid Marnie, 9% owned. given the fact that Harry Grant's out that first week, that may tempt people to get on him closer to team lists, and once we sort of weigh everything up. But otherwise, I mean, he was I mentioned the real focal point in their attack last year. So many times he was throwing over, be it Papali'i or Paulo, Madison maybe even for tries. There's definitely going to be a need for someone to step up this year and help Moses and Gutherson. Is it Marnie or is it Brown? It could be Marnie, and if he takes his attacking output to even greater levels, and suddenly he is in the conversation right alongside Harry Grant as the premier hawker option, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. He's already got such good average to begin with. If you could combine that with some more attacking play, he's looking great. I thought Ryan Madison wasn't a bad option, although he's quite expensively priced. A little bit more cheap than the big gun 2RFs, but looking back to 2020, averaged 75, dropped a little bit last year, but you never know. You could see a little bit of return maybe to form for him.
Yeah, I think he's playing for a contract as well, isn't he, Ryan Madison? So you might see him do this year what we saw Papali'i do last year. Gutho 2%, again, we speak of fullbacks. He's probably not in the conversation, but maybe he's underrated as an asset in this team because he is essentially a second 5/8 for them, if not, the second playmaker, essentially, because he does. How many times have we seen Gutho throw Sivo over for a try, particularly down that left side?
Yeah, I think he's very underrated and he's very involved in their play. So I think he averaged nearly 75 last year. Obviously, the fullback slot is rich with talent, so it's hard to get him in your teams. But I think for drafts, he's a good one to get pretty early.
Yeah, and maybe not as early. You don't have to reach for him, like you would maybe a Paps, Teddy, Trell, Turbo, obviously, in that first round. You might get Gutho round 2, maybe even round 3, depending on your league. Burning questions for the Eels, Tommy. You've got them here. Does standing still equals going backwards? You sort of said there that nothing's really changed from the past 2 years. If anything, maybe you take out Sivo and you take out Blake Ferguson. There's probably more questions than answers with the Eels. How do they fix that? Because those two have been so good for them at different stages.
Yeah, and I think what you said before, that now their wingers are going to be quite small players. I think they may have a bit of trouble getting out of their own end because Sivo was always really good for getting them starting their sets and also just good energy around the team, and the fans loved him. So I think he's a big loss. Dylan Brown needs to stand up, and their forwards are really good, but I just don't know if they really have the back line to be competitive with some of the other attacking teams. So I've got them sliding down a fair bit this season, down to 8th.
Yeah, I've got them in 5th, and I think defensively they're still one of the best teams, and I think we spoke of, with teams like the Knights, they're not scoring points, they're not stopping them either. I think Eels, while their attack might not have been brilliant last year, defensively that they're going to be pretty sound. I've seen some chatter around going in the past couple of days about maybe people starting with Mitch Moses over Nathan Cleary at the halfback slot in Classic. Now, I find that a little bit strange. People have said that they've got a softer run to start the year. I've just looked at their first month. I don't think it is that soft. Titans round 1 at Parramatta. Okay, maybe that's a good fixture. Sharks away, back at Cronulla. I don't think that's an easy fixture. Improved Sharks team. We'll get to that team in just a second. Round 3 away in Melbourne. So immediately, I've got them down as probably 2 harder games. And the Titans round 1, they could surprise us as well.
Yeah, Moses is not for me. I don't think that's really an easy start. I don't think even the Titans game is that easy. So yeah, I would be going around Moses, and if Cleary's fit, he's straight in my team. There's no questions asked there.
Even if he's not, I think I'm happy to run with Blake Taff for round 1. He's going to be there. And, I mean, I know they say it's a long season. Why push Cleary? I think they're going to need Cleary there. He's so influential to be there for as many weeks as possible if they are going to defend this title. Anyway, the Eels 5th for mine, 8th for yours. They do have a tough run, the Eels. They play a lot of those top 5 teams. I think they play each of them twice, that being the Storm, the Roosters, Manly, Souths. Who am I missing there? Maybe that's it. Roosters? Did I say the Roosters?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, maybe I said them twice. Tough draw, the Eels. Have a look at it. For mine, I'm going around a lot of their SuperCoach options besides Penasini, but I still think that they can push for a top 4 spot, maybe just fall short. Tommy, let's move on to the Sharks. Speaking of teams pushing for a top 4 spot, I know you've got big raps on them this year. Let's look at this roster here. So different to what we've seen in recent years from the Sharks. They've made some big signings. The halves there, interestingly, they've got Nico Hines in 6, Trindle in 7. This is NRL.com, of course, but we think it'll be Moylan and Hines in 7.
Yeah, well, it's probably the biggest question, isn't it, going into the season for the Sharkies, and it has been for months now. You've got Moylan versus Trindle for a spot in the halves with Hines. Hines strikes me as more of a natural 5/8, which would mean I think that you would pick a natural halfback in Trindle. But yeah, I tend to agree. It seems like it's trending towards a Moylan and Hines combination. What do you think is the best way forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with you. I think Trindle did a great job last year when he was playing 7. And you say there, Hines playing 6. I think that opens up to be playing more like he did last year at the Storm. I know he had the number 1 on his back, but he was essentially a 5/8, swinging either left behind Munster or right behind Hughes at different times. Probably a good place to start with Nicho Hines. Whether he plays 6 or 7, it probably doesn't matter too much in terms of the way he'll play the game, but his SuperCoach output, I think it may be dented at the Sharks, given the fact that the Storm scored, what did they score last year? 34 points per game. The Sharks just aren't scoring that many points this year. He kicked goals for a lot of that. So say he's kicking 5.5 goals per game, straight away there's already 22 SuperCoach points, which, is he making them up? I don't think so.
Yeah, the goal kicking's a big one, and he didn't really seem to strike them that well the other night in the All-Stars game. I kind of liken him a little bit to Matt Burton. He's coming from a situation which was perfect. He's fullback at the Melbourne Storm, scoring heaps of points. He's now going to a weaker club, although not that much weaker in the Sharks, but he's still going to have to be, leading the team around. He have a lot more responsibility than he did at the Storm. So I don't know, if he's guaranteed the scores he had last year. So I think he's a little bit of a risk this year, Nicho.
13% owned. Obviously, a lot of those players going with Nicho, probably thinking he's kicking goals and that Cleary's not going to be there. Let's get to round 1, the team list Tuesday, and see how that all forms. If it's Moylan at 7 even, Hines at 6, I don't know. I know Moylan has never really played halfback, but you watch the way the Sharks have played in recent years, I think the last 2 years especially, they've really lacked the direction when he wasn't there injured. So he may be wearing 6, but he is playing a lot like a 7, Matt Moylan. He's getting older, getting slower. We know he's injury-prone, Matt Moylan, so I don't know. Maybe it is a case of he goes to 7, almost like a Benji Marshall, Sean Johnson, and he just takes that lesser role, dishes to Hines, and lets Hines do the stuff. Anyway, Cam McInnes, 31% owned. He's the most popular Shark. We've got big raps on him. Is there a question mark over his minutes? Because he is a very minutes-dependent player, we think.
I hope there's not, because he's been generally an 80-minute player his career, whether it be in the second row or lock or at hooker. So, look, I'm hoping that continues, because if he's an 80-minute player, he'll be getting close to 80 points, honestly, the way he scores. I've got him in my team. He's one of the first people I selected. And, yeah, I'm just hoping that injury that he's had doesn't take anything out of him and that he's not, being benched halfway through the game.
Yeah. Obviously, they've got plenty of middles there, so if he is playing 13, maybe he shares time at 9 with Blake Brayley. I think of the two, if you're going to bench one, you'd bench Brayley and keep McInnes out there for closer to 80 minutes then rather than going the other way. And you bring on a prop, even for Feeder, Royce Hunt. Talakai's played through the middle before. I think you'd rather keep Finucane out there, McInnes for as many minutes. Sharks in the past couple of years, they've bled tries through the middle, and those two, Finucane and McInnes, they were signed to prevent that.
Yeah, they're great signings. Experienced players and good defensive players. Like you said, there, McInnes is known for his defence, and Finucane is as solid as a rock. So I think that was probably something they did lack in the past, solid middle, and now they've got that in spades. So I really think they'll have a strong year this year. And they're McInnes and Hines, obviously the two biggest names. Talking of pods now for the Sharkies, and I found one a few weeks ago. We spoke about Wade Graham, only 3% owned. Just think he might be back to his best this year, looking to go out before retirement with a bit of a bang. Historically, he's scored pretty well in SuperCoach when fully fit. At I think he's in the $300,000 range. If he could just do a job for you, not a bad, cheap second row option.
350 thereabouts, so like for like with Ruben Cotter. I know Cotter's been spoken of a lot in this preseason. Graham, if he's playing 80 minutes, which he's an 80-minute player traditionally, I know injuries have crawled in the past couple of years, and his head knocks are always going to be a concern, the way he defends. But if he can be out there for as many minutes as possible, he does have that attacking play in him as well, the upside, the kick, the forced dropout. You're going to get that from Wade. You're not going to get that from a lot of other left edge back rowers. Speaking of the Sharks and the Eels, even just the team we just touched on, we mentioned the Eels' tough draw. So we ran this through our extensive data analysis program to crunch the numbers on the draw. The Sharks had the easiest draw across the course of rounds 1 to 25. The Eels had the worst draw, rounds 1 to 25. So that just opens up the door for these Sharks players who could become assets. You mentioned Ryan Madison. Maybe we look more towards a Britton Nakora, just 2% owned, cheaper, looked really good for the All-Stars, the Maori side the other night. Could be some upside there in Nakora as opposed to going these bigger names, Madison, Papali'i, even throw McInnes into that.
Yeah, I think the draw analysis is so important, isn't it? Because you're only as good as who you're playing against. If you're playing against a blockbuster team every week, no point having you. Brighton Nakora, pretty good last year. I think he's really good at hitting a hole. He was really good with SJ last year. So who he kind of sides with this year, I don't know. I haven't got him in my team at the moment, but I always kind of look for him in drafts. So he might end up in my draft team again.
Yeah.
Another pod. Jesus, this storm is enormous. Will Kennedy, 1% owned. I know the fullback slot is absolutely stacked. Kind of similar to Gutho in a way. He's probably not going to be in your classic team, but one for draft.
Yeah, definitely. I can see Kennedy going as early as the middle of the third round. Once sort of those bigger names are snapped up, but then, players coming back, particularly, I think later picks in a 10, 12-man league, they may be looking towards a Dufty, a Walsh, even a Campbell. But Kennedy, given the Sharks' strength of schedule or lack thereof, their perceived easiness of their fixtures, can see Kennedy becoming a real SuperCoach asset for the Sharks this year. All of that considered, Tommy, where have you got the Sharks finishing? Because we've got a little bit of a difference of opinion here.
Yeah, I've actually put them up into the top 4. I've got them coming 4th this year. I've been pretty keen on them all off season, so I've just stuck to my guns, and I just really like their signings in McInnes, in Hines, in Finucane. Good experienced players, exciting players in Hines. And they were already a good team last year. They just missed a few pieces. Now I think they've got those pieces. Hopefully Fitzgibbon can bring them all together.
Oh, definitely. I haven't even mentioned the coach yet. Defensively, very, very good, Fitzgibbon. He's been the New South Wales Blues defensive coach there with Freddie over the past, I think it's 2 or 3 years there. So he's been doing good things at State of Origin level. Can he do it as a head coach? Maybe a wait and see. But probably no better man for the job. He was being groomed and spoken of as the next big coach, really. Gets his chance here with the Sharks. I've got them finishing 7th. I think they've obviously got the upside in them. I can see why you're pushing them up into 4th. I think, as we say there, the questions around the spine, what does that look like? And it's probably a matter of time before Moylan does get injured and Trindles has to come in. Kennedy, he has to stay fit because obviously then if he's injured, Hines goes to the back, you'd think, and then question marks are starting to get asked about that makeup of the spine. They obviously have depth at the hooker slot there with McInnes and Brayley, all things being equal. But 7th for mine, I think they may struggle to compete with the bigger teams, but I can see them bullying those teams towards the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah, I guess depth is a question mark in those positions you spoke of. But then again, that's the same for a lot of teams. You just need injuries to be on your side, and hopefully injuries can stay relatively low for the Sharkies. They do have a few older bodies, though, so you probably will see the likes of Fafita and Graham missing a week here and there.
For what it's worth, I've just shared again that winners and losers of the fixture analysis on our Instagram handle at SuperCoach365. Go to our story, check it out. It'll be there for the next 24 hours or so. It was posted in January, if you're willing to scroll back that far, if you are that bothered. Tommy, we're going to throw to a quick break. Other side, we're going to get to some listener questions. We'll wrap it all up.
Having a bet on sport this week? Top this.
Whether you're into cricket and curling or golf and greyhounds, Top Sport will let you on for plenty. And with literally hundreds of markets from your own backyard to the international stage, Top Sport has you well covered. So if you want to get the top odds every time, bet with Top Sport.
Top that. Download the app today. Top Sport. Feel the excitement.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly.
Welcome back, SuperCoach365. Ryan and Tommy with you, brought to you by topsport.com.au. You already know that, but let's go through this one more time, Tommy. We've spoken of it a couple of times already. SuperCoach365 Futures Special on your screen now. We've gone through the 16 teams now. This might make a little bit more sense as to how we're feeling about each of these teams this year. Storm top 4, Roosters top 6, Sharks top 8, Knights to miss the 8, $5 looks an absolute special for ours. It's already been 7s into 5s, so there's still time to get on. Obviously, market suspends kick-off at round 1, so get on before round 1. If you aren't a customer, topsport.com.au, go through the link in our bio and the guys will look after you. But Tommy, that kind of just sums up our thoughts as to how these teams will fare this year.
Yeah, exactly right. We're both really keen on the Storm and the Roosters, and we've got them obviously in the bet. The Knights, we're pretty much taking them on this year, especially you have them in last, and it's hard to argue with them being bottom 4. And then the Sharkies, I'm pretty keen on them top 8, and so are you. So, look, hopefully we can make people some money.
Hopefully. Get on, do so responsibly, topsport.com.au. I can say for certain, best bookies in the country. And trust me, I've tried them all out. Top Sport comes top of the list. Tommy, let's get into this. We'll wrap it up. Our listeners' questions, of course, we put it out there about the Sharks, the Eels, Broncos and Knights, the four teams we spoke of tonight, plus any thoughts on trials footy. First one here, Adam Blundell. Thoughts on Kickout over Martin. Haven't spoken of the Panthers tonight, but we'll get to it anyway. Thoughts on Viliami Kickout over Liam Martin. Martin obviously goes into that right edge role vacated by Kurt Capewell. We expect him to play bigger minutes, but we saw even with Capewell, his minutes were mixed last year as well. So no certainty that Martin just suddenly becomes a SuperCoach special.
No, I think the minutes is a big one because I looked at Kurt Capewell a few times last year and he wasn't always playing 80, so that wasn't helpful. And if Liam Martin has the same fate, well, I don't really want to have him. As far as Kickout goes, he's really hit and miss. Some weeks he's getting 100, the next week he's getting 30. So he wasn't one of mine either, really.
Yeah, no, we looked around them. Two players, I don't know their prices. You'd be able to tell me, Tommy, but at the prices, you could probably just either reach to one of those better options we've spoken of. Even McInnes he gets in at the cut price this year, or go down to someone like a Wade Graham, a Cotter, a Nanai, or one of these players around the $350,000 mark that will probably just do as good as job. Maybe slightly less, but make you some cash anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. I wouldn't be at the price, as you say. He's not really worth the money. I'd rather either, go for someone who's more reliable or a cheapie, as you say.
Thoughts here from Risha Barakot _8. Sharks halves. We've just spoken of this in some detail. Moylan, Brayley, Kennedy and Hines in the Sharks spine photo shoot. No Trindle. Yeah, I think it just goes to show that Trindle, if he is getting a spot in this team, it's probably jersey 14, but even then it's a stretch because they probably do have enough depth in McInnes there who can cover 9. Brayley might even go to the halves. We saw Brayley play a lot of his footy in the under-20s days, 6 and 7. So at a pinch, they're probably not going to carry a Trindle on the bench when they can sort of make do otherwise.
Yeah, it seems to be trending that Trindle's going to miss out, but he seems the only genuine 7 at the club, so seems strange to me. Maybe he could pop up at another club this year, who would know?
I reckon he's a chance to go to the Dolphins. I think he's a Queenslander. So originally he came from Queensland and he was in the Storm under-20 system. This is some years ago. Found his way to Cronulla. He was touted as a great signing. I think this was in the Shane Flanagan days even. Came to Cronulla and obviously yet to really get a good go at number 7. We all thought this would be the year. Maybe not the case, but wait and see. He will definitely play some time, but could be one of those great signings for the Dolphins for year 1. You think he's got plenty to offer. Blake's Brushworks. Blake Moore, of course, asks us a couple of questions here. One of them I probably can't repeat. The second one says, best SuperCoach player from each team again, in your opinion. Obviously, the teams we've spoken of tonight can't be same position. So no Ponga, no Kennedy. We'll get back to that one. Let's have a think. Carts3185 says, thoughts on Nakora as a 4th 2RF. Sort of spoken of him already, but a lot of that, he burst onto the scene, I think it was 2019, Tommy. Was at 18 even, when Johnson got to the club for the Sharks, and he was this line-running, try-scoring back rower. We probably haven't seen as much of that in the past 2 seasons from Britton Nakora.
Yeah, we saw glimpses of it last year with Johnson. I think they had a good combination together. Not really sure. Who do we think will be playing in the right for the Sharks in the halves?
I think it's Hines. No, I think it's Hines, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we might get to see him link up with Nico Hines. So, look, he could be an option. I don't have him in my team at the moment, but he's another one there that could be a good pot. I don't mind it.
Yeah, I think the All-Stars and what he did there in wet conditions it made a few people sit up and take notice of Britain Nakora, maybe just trying to play away from those more expensive 2RF options. Let's get back to Blake's question here. Best SuperCoach player from each of these teams. Sharks, Eels, Broncos, Knights. Can't be same position. I'll go with first here. Sharks is probably McInnes. I just think that he's got the upside there. He's safe. Although Kennedy, we speak of Kennedy, but probably go with Gutherson from the Eels at fullback. So that's why I'll go McInnes. Broncos, geez, it's tough. It could be Selwyn Cobbo. If he's fullback for the first few weeks, that could be something. Otherwise, Payne Haas. I mean, it's probably a no-brainer there. And the Knights, as much as we've bagged him out, we start with Caleb Ponga. I'm going to finish with him. I still think he's their best SuperCoach asset. But will he be this year? I don't know. It could be Jake Clifford if he's kicking goals as well.
Haven't you broken the rules? You got Gutho and Ponga.
Oh, fuck me. All right, give me Mitchell Moses then. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you. We've been going for too long. An hour, it's too long.
There's too many fullbacks in this game. I'll go with Ponga because I don't think there's any other good Newcastle player really this year. Payne Haas for Brisbane. Yep. I'll go left field Ryan Madison for the Eels and McInnes at hooker for the Sharkies.
All right, so we're agreeing on a lot of things there. We have done already. Tommy, that wraps us up. We've got through all the 16 teams ahead of trial footy, really getting underway this weekend. And we're looking forward to it. 8 games, Fox League, they'll have us covered. We can't wait to just sit back and watch some footy.
Mate, I don't care that it's trials. I'm going to treat it like it's round 1. I'm just going to sit there and enjoy it. So yeah, can't wait.
SuperCoach365 will have all the analysis from this weekend's trials. Stay tuned for that. Right across podcast, socials. Get us on YouTube as well. Search SuperCoach365. Subscribe, like, thumbs up, notifications on, all of that. Ryan and Tommy, we'll speak to you soon.